Hey everyone, this is Kevin from themathworld.com, and today we're going to be going over LCM, or the lowest common multiple. You may have heard of it as the least common multiple. And the first thing we're going to take a look at is two numbers. We'll say 10 and 20. Now before we get into finding the least common multiple or the lowest common multiple, first we need to know what a prime number is, because we're going to be using prime numbers to figure out what the lowest common multiple is. If you're not too familiar with what a prime number is, it's a number where the only two numbers that divide into it are 1 and itself. So the only numbers that divide into 2 are 1 and 2. There's no other numbers. Next one would be 3. The only numbers that divide into 3 are 1 and 3. 5, 1 and 5. There's no other numbers that divide into these numbers. So these are a couple, and I'm just going to list them up top for you guys. And they start out, the first ones are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and 13. Usually you don't need more than that. That's usually sufficient for whatever you're going to be doing. But the first thing we need to do is we need to find all the prime numbers that go into these. So the first thing you want to do is break down each number into only prime numbers multiplying by prime numbers. So the first thing when I do, anytime I have an even number, is I divide by 2. So I first write 1 times 2, and I'll go ahead and divide this by 2, and that's 5 here. So I'm at 5 here. And 5 is a prime number, so it's just going to be times 5. And then over here, 20, same thing. I'm going to write down my 1 times, and 2, I'm going to divide by 2, since it's an even number. And that gives me 10. And I already know 10 is 2 times 5. So I'm going to write times 2 times 5. So you can see here I've just broken down these numbers, 10 and 20, into their prime numbers. 10 is 1 times 2 times 5, and 20 is 1 times 2 times 2 times 5. And this is going to simplify finding the LCM, and you can use this for any amount of numbers, great or small. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start on the first numbers, and we're going to list all the numbers that are different. And I'll show you what that looks like. So the first thing we're going to do is look at 1. So we have 1, and we're going to go through the list and cross out each one that's on each section. So there's a 1 in each of them, so I'm going to cross out the 1. 2, you only cross out 1, so I cross out a 2 here and a 2 here, so times 2. And then a 5, I'm going to cross out a 5 here and a 5 here, so times 5. And then we still have a 2 left, so I'm going to go ahead and write that as well. So 1 times 2 times 5 times 2, and in this case 1 times 2 is 2, times 5 is 10, times 2 is 20. So in this case our lowest common multiple is 20. So we'll go ahead and take a look at a few more here. Let's take a look at 14 and 26. Again, the first thing we want to do is break each of these numbers down into their prime numbers. So the first thing I always do is I write down 1, and then 14, since it's an even number, I'm going to write down a 2 and divide it by 2, and this gives me 7. And as you can see here, 7 is a prime number, so there's no other numbers. I'm just going to write down my 7. So 14 is the same as 1 times 2 times 7, just breaking it down into prime numbers. And then over here, 26, the first thing I'm going to do, 1 times 2, I'm going to divide this by 2. It's an even number, so I always do my 2 first, is 13. And 13 is a prime number as well, so it's going to be 1 times 2 times 13. Now again, what we talked about before, I'm going to start over here. I have my 1. I'm going to cross out my 1s. I have the 2, so I'm going to cross out 1, 2 from each section. I have a 7. I don't have any 7s to cross out, and I have a 13 over here. So 13. So 1 times 2 times 7 times 3, 7 times 3 is 91, times 2 182 times 1 is still 182. So the LCM for 14 and 26 is 182. And we're going to do one more example with 3 numbers and take a look at how this works for 3 numbers. It's the same thing, but I do want to take a look at it to make sure everyone understands. And I'm just making these numbers up, but we'll try 6, 16, and 27. So the first thing we want to do is find the prime numbers that multiply into 6, and that's 1. They always start out with 1. And then since it's an even number, we know that 2 will go into it, and divide by 2, we're now left with 3. And since that's a prime number, we're just going to write down 3. There's no other numbers. So 1 times 2 times 3 is 6. So that's that section right there. And then 16, write down our 1 times 2. Since it's an even number, we write down 2 first. And that gives us to 8. And since that's an even number, we're going to write down 2 again. And that comes to 4. And since 4 is an even number, we're going to write down 2. And divide that by 2, and you have 2, so we have a 2 left over. So 1 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. Those are the prime numbers that go into 16. And 27, we have our 1 first, and it's not an even number, so we go along the list and see if 3 goes into it. 3 does go into it, so times 3. Divide by 3 up here, and we're down to 9. And 2 doesn't go into it, but 3 does. So 3, and then we're left with 3 here. And since we're left with 3, we're just going to write down our 3 here. So again, the most important, we're going to go through and cross out. So 1, we'll cross out 1, 1 from each of them. So we have 1 times 2, we cross out just 1, 2 times 2. 3, remember we just cross out 1, 3. There's no 3's in there. There's 1, 3 there. And then we'll go ahead and get to here, 2. There's no more 2's. Times 2. Another 2 times 2. Another 2 times 2. And then 3 and 3. So times 3 times 3. So 1 times 2 times 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 6 times 3 times 3 is the answer. And I'll go ahead and do it real quick. That's 6, and that's 12. And 24, 48 times 9, 2, 7, 36. So 432 is the LCM for 6, 16, and 27. And all I did again was find the prime numbers that multiply into these 3 numbers. And then I just went by and put these numbers down. And as I put them down, I crossed out one of those numbers in each section. If there's not one in that section, you don't have to cross it out. So this is an easy way to find the LCM of any number, any amounts of numbers, big or small. So if you guys haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't checked out the website, themathworld.com. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching.